Okay, I think you've all just been asked if you're okay with this being streamed, which is a good sign. So sorry about that. I use this technology all the time, but someone else runs it for me, and it's a learning curve, so my apologies. I'm also going to begin to record. So there we go. Okay. Well, welcome everybody at long last, and my apologies for the delay in getting us started this afternoon. I want to say how important it is that each of you is here with us today. You know, all of you who are here are connected to Gord in some way, and it means so much to us to have you with us as we celebrate his life, as we share some memories. And my name is Sarah Reaburn, and I'm Gord's cousin, and very much appreciate these proceedings. So if we were in a place that was more spiritually grounded, we'd be lighting a candle at the beginning of our celebration of life, because candles are quite a spiritual thing. Some of us who are gathered here today are people of faith and others are not. Gord definitely was not. So I want to put a new meaning on the candle that we're going to use today. I'm lighting this candle today as a symbol of a campfire. So picture us all gathered here to celebrate Gord's life. Picture us gathered around a lovely warm campfire, sharing stories and memories in the great outdoors, just the way Gord would have loved it. Some of you today are joining us on Zoom and others are on YouTube. If you are on Zoom, I would ask you please to remain muted until you are going to speak. And when you speak, of course, then you can unmute yourself. Also, if you have the ability, I see most people do have their names on their pictures. If you don't and know how to do that, would you put your name on your picture so that Catherine, Lynn, and Lois, Gord's family, his sisters and his mother, have a sense of who's here and who's joining us today as we together celebrate Gord's life. To speak. And they've prepared thoughts, and I thank you to everyone who's agreed to speak. It's a great honor to have you with us doing that. If you have something you want to share with Lois or Lynn and Catherine, and are not one of the people who is invited to speak, then I would ask you please to, at the end of the service, go to Gord's Facebook page and leave your comments there. There won't be a time for open mic sharing during today's celebration. So one of the things that we're going to be doing today throughout the service is sharing some words of meditation, and all of them come from this book. This is Richard Wagamese's book, Embers, and the family has chosen these readings from Richard Wagamese's book because they are meaningful to them, and because they feel like it would also represent Gord really well. Comfort and sustenance from the natural world, just like Gord did. And he delighted in the small things that he noticed in his early morning quiet periods. We feel that Gord also found some peace in enjoying the world of nature. And so there will be readings from this book throughout our time together. So let's hold Gord in our thought as we share some memories together. And I'm going to invite Gord's mother, Lois, to speak first.
Now, there. First, I want to thank all of you who sent emails and cards, memories, shared memories it meant a lot to us. I'd especially like to thank those of his Cambridge friends who were so helpful to and supportive of Lynn, Sarah, and Paul when they were there dealing with the difficult things that are required following an unexpected death. Many of the memories you shared mentioned Gord's sense of humor. That was evident very early in his life. My kids watched Sesame Street as youngsters. I don't know whether you'd be familiar with that in the UK. Are you? Oh, good. There are jingles sort of scattered through, and the kids knew all these little jingles. One afternoon, I invited my bridge playing buddies for 2 tables of cards. Make it at the last minute, so we only had 7. 1 full table and 1 incomplete. The day was saved when we persuaded my husband Dave to fill the gap. He was reluctant, but he was a good sport. We were happily playing cards. At least 7 of us were happy when Gord came home from school. He took a quick look around and noted his rather embarrassed, ill-at-ease father. The 8-year-old Gordon then proceeded to saunter through the room singing, "One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just isn't the same." It did nothing to relax his dad, but it sure got a laugh from the women. Gord was a cherished part of our family. We'll miss him sorely.
You're on mute, Sarah.
Sorry about that. Lynn is Gord's sister. You can probably tell that with a quick little look at her that they look very much the same. And she is also going to share some thoughts with us today.
I would also like to thank everyone for their cards and emails. I appreciate the support, but I also learned a lot about Gord and who he was in your eyes. The trip to Cambridge was difficult, and it could have been much more difficult, but the support and friendship we received there, turned it into a journey of healing as well as a journey of sorrow. Gord and I shared a love of books, hiking, and shorts, although I usually put mine away in November and bring them out again in March, depending on the weather, of course. Some of my fondest memories are long phone conversations discussing the pros and cons of a particular book. I'd phone him up and we could talk for an hour just about one book. He was also great if I was trying to remember the title of a book and I say, well, there's this book and this happens and then that happens. And then he'd say, yeah, that's this book. And sometimes he was even able to tell me the page number of the incident that I was remembering. One of my strongest memories is about a trilogy that he enjoyed when he lived in Victoria. He brought the first book over to me and I enjoyed it. So on his next trip, he brought the second one. And of course, the following trip, he brought the third. He asked me how I liked book 2 of the trilogy, and I replied that I'd enjoyed the story, but it got a little weird near the end, and I told him about some of the parts that were a little uncomfortable for me. And he just very gently reached out and took back book 3, saying, "You are not going to like this one." We both laughed and we moved on to whatever book we were reading at that time. On one of my trips to the UK, we did some hiking together on some small islands in Scotland. Gord wanted to go to Scotland, but preferred a place that was not too popular. I found Jura and its neighbor, Islay. At the time, Jura advertised itself as having 200 people and 5,000 cattle and deer. His response, "That sounds great." I can still remember our hysteria the morning we left Jura. We rounded a curve on the main road, and before us was a short stretch, absolutely covered in cow manure. Dad told us later that cows often sleep on the road when they've retained some warmth from the day, and then they relieve themselves as soon as they stand up in the morning. Some of the crazy driving was because of the cow manure, but some of it was definitely because he was laughing so hard he couldn't keep the car straight. We were both glad it was a rental car and we wouldn't be responsible for cleaning it up when we were done. We also shared some hiking and driving adventures in Iceland a few years later. Again, primarily the less touristy parts of the country. As siblings, we were very different people. We sometimes had to discuss things, but we always found a way to work it out. When COVID hit, we were negotiating between the Faroe Islands, where Gord wanted to go, and Orkney and Shetland, where I was interested in part because our dad's family is from Shetland. We agreed, or Orkney, pardon me, Orkney. We agreed that whichever one we chose, the other was likely to still be there waiting for us for our next trip. Didn't occur to either of us that one of us would not be there. I miss him now, and I will continue to do so.
I'm going to invite Gord's other sister, Catherine, to share some of her thoughts as well.
I too thank you all for being there. We thank you. Gord and I both loved hiking and backpacking, and we did some amazing trips together, saw some amazing things, hurt in some amazing places afterwards. One of the things that was always true is him giving enormous quantities of trail mix, crackers, and whatever else was available to small animals. They could sucker him out of an entire box of crackers. They just had him pegged as an easy mark. We were in the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, and we came across 2 very small fawns, not born that day, but born just a few days before. And they were bleeding for their mother, which is a heartbreaking sound. I know now that it's normal for does to leave their fawns for hours at a time and go off and forage and then come back and pick them up. But we didn't know it then. And Gord was as upset as the fawns were. Like, do we stay? Do we try to help them? How do you rescue 2 fawns? In the days before cell phones, how do you find a park ranger to ask what to do? In the end, the thing we decided to do was move off. And so if the mom was just waiting there off in the forest, she could come back. And I also know now that was the right thing to do, but we didn't know then. And Gord worried about that little pair for the rest of the day. Mom has already mentioned Gord's great and extremely dry sense of humor. But like many of us, sometimes he was funniest when he wasn't trying to be. We were hiking in the southern Chilcotin area of BC, which is, I don't know, like 4 hours from Vancouver, maybe. Really beautiful open area. You can, for those who haven't been here, that we live in a rainforest, and the southern Chilcotin is much more open. there are trees, but you get into beautiful country high up and you don't need trails very quickly. We were sometimes following game trails, but often we were relieved to find a human-made trail that's wider and much easier to follow. We were following a really good one, wide and even, about halfway up the slope of a river valley. And I can't remember now why we left the trail. I'm gonna say we were camping at the bottom, like near the water. In any case, there was time passed between when we left the trail and when we felt we needed to find it again, which is why I assume we were camping. We disagreed about how and where to find the trail. Gord was sure if we just kept going down the river valley, we would come across the trail, but we had left it up above. So I said we needed to go back up the slope. Gord won. We were bushwhacking along the valley floor for what felt like an extremely long time. It probably was a morning, the best part of a day. We were lucky to make a kilometer in an hour, scrambling over logs, scrambling over everything. And I got tired of it and a little more strident in my argument that we had to go back up the steep slope to find the trail. And Gord still disagreed. Finally, in frustration, he turned and he looked me in the eye and he said, I may not be correct, but I am not uncertain. Anyway, it's hard to accept that we won't do more trips together.
Thank you, Catherine. So one of the meditations from Richard Wagamese's book says this: we approach our lives on different trajectories, each of us spinning on our own separate shining orbits. What gives this life its resonance is when those trajectories cross and become engaged with one another, or as fleetingly as they. There is a shared energy, and it can feel as though the whole universe is in the process of coming together. I live for those times. No one is truly ever just passing. Every encounter has within it the power of enchantment, if you're willing to look. My friends, we are about to watch a video with a number of pictures of Gord from different parts of his life. I'm having trouble with my sound. Is anyone else hearing the sound badly? Yes, okay. Any of these pictures, Gord took himself. So Gord was an excellent photographer, and each of the pictures that you saw that Gord was not in are ones that he took. So it was very hard to choose. There are so incredibly many pictures that Gord took that are phenomenal. And so it was nice to see some of those. Reading again from Richard Wagamies. When there's a crack in my mirror, I can't see myself as I am. All I see is the crack. The crack tells me there's something wrong with me and that I'm not enough and that this is how others see me too. It's not a question of finding a better mirror. It's about seeing beyond the crack. I am not, nor will I ever be perfect, but I don't need to live for approval. And the joy in the unique, worthy, lovable, beautiful, sacred being that I am, and to celebrate the same thing in others. That's seeing beyond the crack. I'm learning to love my imperfections. In the end, they make me who I am in all my flawed glory. I'm going to invite some of you to speak now, and we're going to friends of Gord's. And so, Ellen, I would like you to unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. So I met Gord when we were both working on our PhDs at UVic. He was cross-appointed between computer science and biology, and I was studying biochemistry. So we were in neighboring labs, so to speak. We started our friendship by mostly going for lunch with my brother, Byron, who also was on campus at the time. And we got into this habit of having lunch together regularly. And during these shared lunch hours, we really didn't talk shop at all. We talked about everything else. And this is one of the things I loved about Gord. He was an amazing conversationalist. Conversation topics varied greatly. They were really never constrained by any topic because Gord knew about everything. And if he didn't know about something, then he was always ready to learn about it and happy to join into the conversation in that way. These conversations would be, as I said, any topic was fair game. And the ease of the conversations followed through our friendship, so that when we weren't at university together anymore and we were hiking together and with family and friends, the conversations were again in depth and great breadth of topic, and always interesting and diverse. Now, when Gord and I did talk shop at the very beginning, he taught me about the computational side of computational biology. And I was lucky to teach him the biology side. And I remember sometimes he would ask about some of those cellular processes that he didn't know all the details about. So I was very honored to be able to add in any way. But one of my favorite memories of that time back in the beginning was when the biologists would ask for some analysis. And I know there's some biologists in the computational biology world here, so they may have a similar memory. We would ask for something, and Gord just look at us. And he would say, "That's not the way it works." Or, we can't just do that. And then he would try in great detail with much patience to explain the rigors of the math to us biologists. The second memory that I wanted to share involves my family. So Gord moved to Cambridge when my daughters were 2 and 5. So they hadn't had much of a chance to develop a friendship with him yet. So those friendships had to continue to develop as he came back for his visits back to Victoria. And I was looking back at some of the email exchanges between Gord and I about planning his trips and where he would stay and what kinds of things. And often our trip organizations involved a bunk and a hike. And so I was laughing. There were a couple of emails that made me smile. And one of them was in 2011. It was so not too long after he'd left. And I said to him in the email, by the way, when I mentioned that you were coming, Abby, our oldest, said, yay. And Amelia, who's our youngest, said, who? And I showed her a picture of you and she still had no idea. So I guess she doesn't remember you, but I'll cut her some slack considering that she was only 2.5 last time you were here. And that made me laugh because it was really an indication of how excited the girls were. Well, I guess maybe not Amelia yet, but that was the second email where we were just organizing, what we were doing that time that he was, when he could come and things like that. And I said, you're always welcome, even just to hang out. And I would say relax, but I have 2 small children who are very excited to see you. So that might not be possible. And so these were just 2 email little quips that just reminded me of how Gord connected with, after sort of the relationship with me developed, he connected with Ian, my husband, my girls, as well as my brother Byron and his family, who would always be part of our crowd. Gord would say, what are you and the crowd up to on this weekend? And so there was always a hike involved. And so our friendship began more than 20 years ago and developed and blossomed to all the members of my family and friends. And we're very grateful for how he shared his life with us. And I think one of my favorite things about Gord, besides his sense of humor, is the ease with which you could be with Gord. You could just sit and be. And conversation started, that was great. If not, just being with him was really, really easy and really wonderful. We will always cherish that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm going to ask Steve if he would like to share with us next.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Lois, Catherine and Lynn, for the opportunity to say a few words. I was the one of our group who discovered the news that I knew couldn't be shared in any other way than in person, simply because I knew how well Gord was regarded by us all. However, I found myself on the receiving end of news that educated me what a generally kind, generous and humble man Gord really was. Gord never told me that he was the jerky fairy, delivering jerky and goodwill to our friends who found themselves in hospital. Gord never made sure that a friend didn't go home alone and then rode the bus back to collect his bike. Gord was there to help me too. He helped me qualify as a Google photographer, and as part of being as my assistant, Gord will always be immortalised on Google Maps at a prehistoric ground fort just outside Cambridge called Belsize Hill. Gord, you really were the best of us. I genuinely feel honoured to have known you, mate, to have called you my friend. And there'll always be a little bit of Canada right here. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mary, would you join us next, please?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah and everybody. My name's Mary Sanseverino, and I live over in Victoria. I, along with my partner, Mike, have known Gord pretty much since he started at UVic. Now, over the years, Gord and I shared many mutual friends, and I'm thinking of Mark and Kathy, Jenny, Ken, and many more. We shared many pints at the Grad Center on Friday night, solving the problems of the world. And we had, as so many of you have talked about, many adventures. So Gord was quite an adventurer. We both enjoyed photography, especially landscape and nature photography. And we were both early adopters of digital cameras. And I still look at and use images made on trips where wildflower photography was our goal. Indeed, some of those photos are amongst my favorite images of all times. But I think that our friendship was firmly and finally cemented by our shared love of the Scottish Highlands. People thought, and still do, that we were crazy to like such a wet and midgie-filled place. And if you have never experienced midgies, they are truly horrid creatures. But anyway, that's what's there, and you have to put up with it. Now, I remember one trip in particular. It was 2011, and Mike and I were on sabbatical in Glasgow. Gord came up from Cambridge for a few days of Munro bagging. Now, those of you that don't know, Munros are mountains in Scotland that are over 3,000 feet. And I know for Canadians, we go, 3,000 feet, excuse me. But when you add in the climate that is Scotland, well, you get some challenges. So it rained for Gord's entire trip. Of course, but that didn't stop us. We decided to bag Ben Vane. Now that's the smallest of the Munros. It's right on 3,000 feet. And the trip started out well enough, but then it rained as only Scotland seems capable of delivering. Now I'll tell you up front that we were not successful on Ben Vane, but it wasn't the rain that stopped us. No. It was the mist creeping over the hills that finally did us in. Here we were, and you can see on the image behind me, a well-used trail, but we couldn't see where to put our feet. So no Munro for us. Indeed, we all stopped under a rocky overhang to put on any dry clothing we had packed. And I still remember Gord wringing a torrent of water out from under his socks. Now, if it wasn't for a hardy, kilt-clad Scotsman emerging from the swirling clouds and putting us back on the correct track, I think we'd all still be perched up on that side of Ben Vane, waiting for the mist to lift. Just to close, I think I just want to say that Gord was a thoughtful, bright, adventuresome, kind, and considerate friend. And he's going to stay that way forever in my memory. Thank you so much for letting me share these thoughts with you all.
Thank you, Mary. Rory, would you join us next, please?
There we are, unmuted. Hello, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts. When Gord first came to CRUK, to Cambridge and to the Cancer Research UK Institute, he sat at the desk right next to mine. And we worked side by side for the next 13 years. Sometimes literally, but always together. We had a lot in common right at the very beginning because we both worked as professional software engineers in industry before making a shift to biology and genomics research. But I just want to make sure people know that just about Gord's professional life, because he was capable of working at a very high level, and he was particularly strong in working out methods for analyzing complex genomics data. And he had very exacting standards and very little patience for cutting corners, which sometimes led us into conflict. But we truly collaborated on many, many projects, including co-developing a software package that we made freely available and supported together for more than 10 years. Now his software, it's already been used in more than 1,000 medical and biological research papers. So we can be assured that Gord's impact on medical science will be felt for many years to come. But more than a colleague, Gord became a real friend. He was a regular guest at our table, and I have many memories of he and my wife animatedly discussing books and arguing about religion. We also knew in larger gatherings, not too large, but when we had other people, we could always drop him in, and he would hold his own as a conversationalist and make whatever gathering it was more interesting. But the highlight of our year was our annual trip to the very northwest tip of Scotland at the summer solstice to a place called Sandwood Bay. And that's where I'll think of him best, because he was in his element there. He was at his most relaxed when he was sleeping on the ground, as far from civilization as possible. Now, one of the photographs that went by in particular, it was just taken this past June, shows a side of him I think that some people didn't see that much, where he's animatedly telling a story by the fire. And because it was there that he would relax enough to really tell his stories. And we always enjoyed that. Now, our good friend Nick reminded me of another moment from that trip, this just a few weeks ago. We climbed up on a high dune overlooking the beach to watch the sunset. And Gord had gone ahead and he saw us. He wanted to join us, but his approach from the beach side was a 30-foot wall of sand. So we shouted down for him to come up the back way. We'd come, which was much easier. It was a proper dune and a nice, easy rise. But he was determined to go straight up this cliff of sand. He was just going to go the most direct way. And after a couple attempts where he went up and slid back down, he figured it out and bowled his way straight up, and we were all cheering. And he got to the top, and we all sat down and were just very quiet as we watched the colors of the sun as it slowly sank into the North Atlantic. I have so many memories of him like that, but that's one I know that will always stay with me. So Sandwood Beach and the empty desk right near mine are just two of the many, many places that'll never be the same. And I know I'll always feel his absence keenly in so many of those places. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. Natalie, I'm going to invite you to speak next, please.
Thanks, everybody, for sharing these wonderful stories and just giving me a glimpse of Gord's life that's sort of outside of my realm of knowing him. I met Gord when I first moved to Ottawa, and it was 1993, and I was brand new here, and he was part of a circle of friends. I think Glenn and Lynn also know Gord from that time. And he was working at Nortel at the time, and our group of friends used to go to dinners and pubs and parties together. I didn't quite share his fondness of the outdoors the way other people did. I was more of a credit card kind of camping person. But nevertheless, we did do a few little hikes and things, but mostly it was the parties and the pubs. And the things I most fondly remember is we had a repertory cinema here, the Bytown. And it was sort of a weekly thing that we would go to a movie at the Bytown and then go for coffee afterwards. And we would have these great philosophical debates afterwards and discuss the movie. And I think that one of the things I remember about Gord is he just also gave the best hugs. You know, he loved his hugs and he gave the best hugs. He was always a man of simple tastes. I always remember like his favorite food was lentils and rice at that point, and maybe it still was to this day, to his last days. But he also had this uncommon wit and humor that everybody talks about. He had this very incisive way of finding the irony and the humor in just about every situation, and especially the human condition. And I remember that these insights would often start with the Gord trademark, well, you know. It's just like, always start with, well, you know, and then he'd go into it. And after he moved to Victoria, we stayed in touch by email and then by Facebook. And we did our best to try and hook up for dinner because I have family in the Lower Mainland. You know, Lois and Catherine and Lynn, his family, have been there. And so if our schedules overlapped, we'd try to get together for dinner. And of course, that happened less often once he moved to Cambridge. But I just this year, I reached out to him to see if he'd be interested in collaborating on a research project because I'd started my PhD and we had an RNA sequencing project, and he was all excited. I was very excited, and we were meeting once a week, and I really enjoyed our chats. And I was really, we were really looking forward to collaborating, getting both our names on a paper. And he was just so supportive of the trials and tribulations I was going through as a PhD student. And I think like our talks were just a bright spot in my week. And I am so sorry that he left us too early, because I know that the memory of his laugh and his voice is going to stay with me always. And I just want to thank everybody else for sharing your memories and for allowing me to share mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mike, would you join us next, please?
Hi, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. So I'd like to share my deepest condolences and a little bit about my friendship with Gord, which spans nearly 2 decades and 2 continents. I first met Gord right after my undergrad when I joined Ben Koop's lab at the University of Victoria. He was doing his PhD, which at the time was a unique combination of computer science and biology. And as Ellen said so well, like so many people who were lucky to have worked with Gord, I quickly recognized his deep knowledge of computer science, his willingness to share this knowledge, and his thoughtfulness, kindness, and patience. I too was one of those who really benefited, and I learned a lot from Gord. I also got to know more about Gord's love of the outdoors and literature, and of course his wonderfully dry sense of humor. And a lot of this, including times, I don't know if you remember Mary and Mike, we were at the Grad Lounge more than once discussing all sorts of fun things. And really, there's many of us, I speak on behalf of all the members of the Koop Lab who got to know Gord this way, and I know all of them feel the sadness that I felt hearing about Gord's passing. Just to go a little bit more about what Gord did, his knowledge of computer science and his ability to apply it to biological data was remarkable. And I was really in awe of what he contributed to this really large project our lab had called the Genomic Research on Atlantic Salmon. I found something out of Victoria. My mom's there was something Ben sent us, our group leader. It was like number 16 in the world for the amount of data this project had generated. And really Gord was the one that wrangled the data, put it together, and really made this project happen. And I left Victoria in 2007 to go to Duncan Odom's lab at the Cambridge Research Institute. And looking back at my emails, I obviously miss Gord a lot because it was only 3 months before I emailed him saying that he might want to consider moving to Cambridge. And I was trying to tell him how awesome it was and all the exciting new technologies and whatnot. And I wrote him again 5 months later to sort of say, so are you thinking about moving? And in that time, he was just finishing a thesis. And in fact, he replied with interest. And as you know from Rory, he came to Cambridge. And when he joined, he was actually living with me in my flat for a short while. And for those of what you've heard and all that you know him, he wasn't really the kind of person to have roommates, at least roommates like me. And with record speed, and it was really hard to get a flat in Cambridge when you first show up there with you don't have a bank account, all these things you have to jump through. Gord, within a matter of weeks, found an ancient place above a lawyer's office on Regent Street. And I laugh at this because they had a dome ceiling, it looked like a hobbit's hole. And there's only one place in the middle of his flat where Gord could actually stand up. But for Gord, that bit of solitude was definitely something he was very happy with. And he also laughed at this place that he found. And as expected, his talent was recognized. His contributions to science started with our group, moved to Jason Carroll's group, and then later with Rory and the bioinformatics core. I'm one of those people that uses Gord's software. My lab still uses it to this very day. And we've shared so many times with my wife, Valerie, who's here, adventures with Melanie Conrad and Owen Mackwood all throughout Europe as well. Being in Cambridge, we were able to pop over to Dublin, Barcelona, Christmas in Marburg. There was a nice picture there of Gord, and so many fun memories. And since moving back to Canada, it's been such a great pleasure to see Gord continue to blossom, continue with his friendships. I vicariously look at his photos from Sandwood Bay. And I was really looking forward to seeing him again. And it's really hard for me to accept that this isn't going to happen. But I am grateful for all the time we spent together over the years. And I'm very comforted to know that my sadness and deep respect for Gord shared by our many mutual friends from around the world. And Gord's been such an important part of my life. And Gord, you will be missed and you will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our final speakers are Lynn and Glenn.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our memories of Gord. My name's Lynn Everett, and this is my husband, Glenn. Sorry. Okay. I met Glenn and Gord in the fall of 1986. We were all the same night meeting up as interns as we worked at Bell Northern Research. We would love to show you some pictures of the 80s and our fun together, but it was the 80s, so we don't have any pictures of that. But we did become good friends. And after we left Ottawa in 86, Glenn and Gord were both at SFU, and I returned to UVic. And so what many of you might not know is Gord switched from SFU to join me at UVic, and we graduated together with computer science degrees. And after graduation, the three of us all returned back to Bell Northern Research in Ottawa in 1990. So you want to start the pictures?
Yeah, we did manage to find a few pictures of us in the 90s. So this first picture is a very rare sighting of Gord in trousers. This picture was from our wedding in 1994. You could see Gord was keeping it classy, matching his suit jacket with some bunny ears for our guest. This next picture might also be something you have not seen, Gord without a shirt. Now, this was not a typical Friday night in Ottawa, but instead it was Halloween in 1994. I'm not sure what look we were going for, and I have no memory of that party, so we must have had fun. After we left Ottawa, Lynn and I moved to California, and Gord returned to UVic. We did meet up as often as we could. I met up with him in London a few times while I was there on business. Gord loved the museums. This is a picture of Gord from 1999 at the...
Go back one,
Oh,
Sarah?
yeah.
Let's go back.
That one.
What? No, one more.
One more.
Go back. You're going forward. Go back.
I'm sorry.
Can you go?
There.
There, wow, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a picture from the UVic campus in 1999. Gord was holding our daughter, Danelle. And then in 2012, Gord came to visit us in California. Here we are hiking with our son, Patrick.
So Gord, as you could tell from what you've heard today, he was always ready for a hike. He loved the outdoors and the peace and quiet. So I want to share the last two times we met up with Gord. It was in the spring. The first one was the spring of 2019. We were both going to be on Vancouver Island at the same time. So I called him up and said, "Do you want to join us for a hike?" "Absolutely," he would say. So my daughter had found a place in Nanaimo called The Abyss. So Gord was all in. And so he was very excited. And so with snow on the ground and walking shorts at the ready, Gord and Danelle and I met for a hike. I love this next picture because it is Danelle and Gord peering into the abyss. The abyss turned out just to be a crack in a very big rock, and Gord was less than impressed. However, in the next picture, you can see I brought some blueberry muffins with me, and after 2 or 3 muffins, all was right again. So then in August of 2019, we arranged a family vacation for Scotland and met up with Gord. And once again, I called him up and I said, "Do you want to go on a hike with us around the Isle of Skye?" "Absolutely," he said. This next picture is of Gord with our kids, Patrick and Danelle, near one of the locks. I can't remember which one. And then this last picture is the three of us in a pub in Glasgow.
A fitting end to our Scottish adventures. I'd like to propose a toast at this point, a grilled cheese toast to our dear friend Gord. We miss you, we love you, and thank you for 35 years. Great adventures together.
Thank you.
Oh, I wish I had grilled cheese with me. There's a story there, I'm sure, that that's at some point bears telling. We're going to read another piece of the Richard Wagamese book. This is a good one for Gord and for today. Missing someone is feeling a piece of your heart gone astray. Sure, it keeps beating and sure you keep breathing, but there's a gap in the rhythm of it and in the rhythm of the everyday things around you. You seem to move a little less gracefully, but still you move. And that's the critical thing, because missing someone doesn't mean that things grind to a halt. Instead, it means you move out of gratitude for the gift of their presence in your life. All we have are moments. So live them as though not one can be wasted. Inhabit them. Fill them with the light of your best good intention. Honor them with your full presence. Find the joy, the calm, the assuredness that allows the hours and days to take care of themselves. If we can do that, we will have lived. So a few months ago, Gord and Lois and Catherine and Lynn and I were on Zoom together. And we were talking about times when our hearts were full of awe and wonder. I think Gord would have worded that a little differently. And Gord told this story about hiking in the Cascade Mountains with a friend, perhaps one of you. They'd been hiking for a while, and all of a sudden they come over this crest, and opened up before them was this really amazing whole mountainside full of wildflowers, just wildflowers everywhere that you could see. And the unexpectedness of it gave him just such an incredible sense of joy. We're going to finish up in a minute by showing the slideshow again, and you're welcome to leave at any point during that presentation. If you stay to the end, you will be automatically signed out. So before we start it, thank you for coming. But also the next time when you're out in nature, whether you are a nature person or not, if there's something magnificent that fills you with that sense of joy, take a moment to think about Gord and to appreciate the earth the way that he did. We keep Gord in our thoughts and in our minds as we share the video one more time.